Daeho rubbed his tired eyes as he walked through the corridors of Neo-Sol Space Station. The delivery run had taken 16 hours, and his back hurt from sitting in the cargo ship's cramped pilot seat. All he wanted was a bowl of hot noodles and maybe 8 hours of sleep before his next shift started. His stomach rumbled loudly, reminding him that he had skipped lunch again. The space station orbited Ganymede, one of Jupiter's moons, and served as a major trading hub between Earth and the outer colonies. Daeho had been making cargo runs here for 3 years, but he usually stuck to the commercial docks and the cheap food district. Today, his navigation app was acting strange, probably because of the solar flare warnings he had ignored during his approach. He turned left at what he thought was the corridor to the food court. The hallway looked fancier than he remembered, with dark marble floors and strange symbols carved into the walls. Maybe they had renovated this section. The station was always changing, adding new areas for the different alien species that had recently joined the galactic community. Daeho checked his phone again, but the screen just showed a loading symbol. He sighed and kept walking. His nose told him food was nearby, or at least he hoped so. The corridor opened into a massive entrance with tall double doors made of black metal. They were decorated with red crystals that glowed softly in the dim light. Through the doors he could hear music, strange haunting music that made his skin tingle. Maybe there was a restaurant beyond these doors, one of those fancy themed places that catered to rich tourists. Daeho pushed the doors open, hoping they at least had a bathroom he could use. What he saw inside made him freeze completely. The hall was enormous, easily the size of a football field. The ceiling stretched up so high that Daeho could barely see the top, where thousands of floating red lights drifted like fireflies. Massive pillars of black stone lined both sides of the room, and between them stood hundreds of people. Except they were not exactly people. They were tall and pale, with skin that seemed to glow slightly in the crimson light. Their eyes reflected the light like cat's eyes, and they all wore elaborate robes in shades of black, red, and deep purple. Every single one of them had turned to look at him. At the center of the hall stood a woman in ceremonial armor. The armor was deep red, almost the color of fresh blood, and it covered her from neck to toe in interlocking plates that somehow looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. Her black hair fell past her shoulders, and her eyes glowed with a fierce red light. She was beautiful in a way that made Daeho's breath catch in his throat and also slightly terrifying. An elderly alien in flowing robes stood next to her, holding some kind of ornate staff. When he saw Daeho, his eyes went wide and he gasped so loudly that the music stopped. Daeho took a step backward. This was definitely not the food court. The elderly alien pointed at Daeho with a shaking finger and shouted something in a language Daeho did not understand. The words were harsh and flowing at the same time, like water mixed with gravel. The entire crowd began murmuring, and the sound grew louder and louder. The woman in red armor stared at Daeho with an expression he could not read. Shock, maybe, or anger, possibly both. Daeho raised his hands in what he hoped was a peaceful gesture. Sorry, wrong room. I was looking for the food court. I will just leave now. He turned to go, but the doors slammed shut behind him with a boom that echoed through the hall. Daeho grabbed the handles and pulled, but they would not budge. His heart started beating faster. A voice spoke in Korean, startling him. You have crossed the threshold during the calling of the consort. Daeho spun around and saw a younger alien approaching him. This one wore simpler robes and had kind eyes. He held a small device that glowed blue. Translation device, the alien explained, tapping the device. I am Kyung Min, assistant to the High Officiant. You have created a very complicated situation, human. I just walked through a door, Daeho said, his voice coming out higher than he intended. I did not mean to interrupt anything. What is a calling of the consort? Kyung Min glanced back at the woman in armor, then at Daeho. This is a Valkyr royal wedding ceremony. The bride is Princess Hana, crown princess of the Valkyr Empire. The calling of the consort is an ancient ritual. Whoever crosses the ceremonial threshold first during the calling becomes the legitimate groom. Daeho's brain took a moment to process this. Then he laughed because surely this was a joke. That is ridiculous. I am just a cargo pilot. I got lost. There must be some kind of exception for accidents. The doors burst open again and another Valkyr male strode in. He was tall and muscular, wearing armor similar to Hana's but in black and silver. His face was twisted in rage, and when he saw Daeho standing at the threshold, he roared. That is Tae Yang, Kyungmin whispered. He was supposed to be the groom. He is 30 seconds too late. Taeyang shouted at the elderly officiant, gesturing wildly at Daeho. The argument was loud and angry, even though Daeho could not understand the words. Other Valkyr joined in, and soon the entire hall was filled with shouting voices. Through it all, Princess Hana remained silent. She watched Daeho with those glowing red eyes, her expression unreadable. Daeho wanted to apologize, to explain, but he felt frozen under her gaze. Finally, a group of 7 Valkyr in golden robes entered the hall. The shouting stopped immediately. These must be important people, Daeho thought. Very important based on how everyone bowed. Kyungmin bowed too, and tugged on Daeho's sleeve until he awkwardly bent at the waist. "The High Council," Kyungmin whispered. The tallest of the council members, a woman with silver hair and eyes that glowed even brighter than the others, stepped forward. She spoke, and Kyungmin translated quickly. "She is asking for your name and species." "Daeho, human, from Earth," he managed to say. The councilwoman spoke again, her voice stern and commanding. Kyungmin's face went pale as he translated. "The law is absolute. You crossed the threshold during the calling. You are now bound by sacred law to Princess Hana. If the ceremony does not proceed, the princess will be executed at dawn for bringing dishonor to the royal bloodline." "What?" Daeho's voice cracked. "Executed? For something I did? That is insane." The councilwoman's expression did not change. Kyungmin translated her next words carefully. "You have 2 choices, human. Complete the bonding ceremony with Princess Hana, or she dies when the sun rises. Valkyr law has stood for 10,000 years. It cannot be broken, not even for a mistake." Daeho looked at Princess Hana again. She was still watching him, but now he could see something else in her eyes. Acceptance, maybe. Like she had already decided her fate. Something in Daeho's chest tightened. This was not fair. None of this was fair. She had not done anything wrong. He was the idiot who got lost and walked through the wrong door. And now she would die because of his mistake? His mother had always told him he was too stubborn for his own good. His friends said he could not walk away from people who needed help, even when he should. Daeho had spent most of his life running from responsibility, bouncing from job to job, avoiding anything that tied him down. But he could not walk away from this. "Fine," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "I will do it. The ceremony, I mean. We will figure out the legal stuff later, but I am not letting someone die because I got lost." Kyungmin translated, and a ripple of surprise went through the crowd. Taeyang shouted something that sounded very much like a curse. The High Council members exchanged glances. Princess Hana's eyes widened slightly. It was the first real emotion Daeho had seen on her face. She tilted her head, studying him like he was a puzzle she could not quite figure out. The silver-haired councilwoman spoke again. This time Kyungmin's translation sounded almost amused. "The High Counselor says you are either very brave or very foolish, human. Probably both. The ceremony will begin immediately." Daeho swallowed hard. "Great, so what do I have to do?" As Kyungmin began explaining the ceremony, Daeho caught Princess Hana's eye one more time. She gave him the smallest nod, and something that might have been gratitude flickered across her face. This was going to be the strangest day of his life, and it had started with him just wanting noodles. The ceremony was like something out of a fever dream. Daeho stood next to Princess Hana in front of the high officiant, trying very hard not to panic. Kyungmin stood nearby with his translation device, whispering instructions that made less sense with each passing minute. "Now you must drink from the chalice of eternal bond," Kyungmin said, gesturing to a silver cup that the officiant held out. Daeho took the cup carefully. The liquid inside was thick and dark red, almost black. It smelled like copper and something else he could not identify. "What is this?" "Blood wine. It symbolizes the sharing of life essence between bonded pairs." Of course it was blood wine. Daeho closed his eyes and drank. The taste was horrible, like licking a battery while eating spoiled fruit. He coughed and nearly dropped the cup, but managed to keep it down. The crowd murmured, which he hoped was approval and not disgust. Hana took the cup next and drank without even flinching. She handed it back to the officiant with perfect grace, and Daeho felt embarrassed by his own reaction. The ceremony continued. Daeho had to repeat vows in Valkyr language, stumbling over the harsh syllables while Kyungmin fed him each word. The gathered Valkyr watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. Taeyang stood in the back, his face dark with rage. Then came the part Kyungmin called the Dance of Unity. It is a ritual combat dance, Kyungmin explained quickly. You and Princess Hana will demonstrate your compatibility through coordinated movement and symbolic battle. Just follow her lead and try not to fall. Combat dance? Daeho whispered urgently. I took Taekwondo when I was 12 and quit after 3 months. But the music had already started, drums beating in a complex rhythm that made his heart race. Hana moved to the center of the open space, her red armor gleaming. She looked at Daeho and raised one hand, beckoning him forward. Daeho walked out to meet her, very aware that hundreds of alien eyes were watching his every move. Hana began to move, her steps precise and flowing like water. She spun and struck at the air, her movements sharp and controlled. Daeho tried to copy her, but his body did not move like hers. He was clumsy and off balance, so he stopped trying to imitate her and instead did the only thing he could think of. He moved unpredictably. When Hana struck high, he ducked low. When she advanced with flowing steps, he shuffled to the side. He threw in a few Taekwondo moves he half remembered, mixed with completely made-up gestures. It probably looked ridiculous, but at least he did not fall. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Hana's eyes flashed with what might have been amusement. She increased the pace, moving faster and faster. Daeho kept up through sheer stubborn determination, dodging and weaving in ways that had no pattern or grace. When the music finally stopped, Daeho was breathing hard and sweating. Hana was barely winded, but she inclined her head to him in what looked like respect, and the crowd erupted in applause that sounded like approval. Kyungmin looked relieved. The high officiant says your movements show the chaos of innovation. Humans fight with unpredictable creativity. This is considered a good sign. Daeho was too tired to point out that he had just been flailing around trying not to embarrass himself. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. There were more rituals, more symbolic gestures, and more words in a language Daeho did not understand. Finally, the high officiant declared them bonded and the hall erupted in cheers. Hana turned to Daeho. Up close, her eyes were not just red but contained tiny flecks of gold. You did well, human, she said in perfect Korean, her voice cool and melodic. You speak Korean? Daeho asked, surprised. I speak 17 languages. It is expected of royalty, she paused. Thank you for agreeing to this. I know it was not your choice. Before Daeho could respond, they were swept away by attendants and escorted through the station's corridors. Kyungmin followed, still providing helpful translation and explanation. They arrived at a suite of rooms that was larger than Daeho's entire apartment back on Earth. The walls were made of dark stone, and floating lights drifted near the ceiling. Furniture that looked both ancient and futuristic filled the space. These are the royal quarters, Kyungmin explained. You will stay here while the council determines the next steps. I will be nearby if you need anything. Then he left and Daeho was alone with his new wife, his alien vampire wife. This was his life now. Hana removed her ceremonial armor piece by piece, revealing a simple black outfit underneath. Without the armor, she looked less intimidating but no less impressive. She was tall, nearly as tall as Daeho, and moved with the grace of a trained fighter. We should talk, she said, gesturing to the seating area. They sat on opposite ends of a long couch that seemed to be made of some kind of smooth stone. The silence stretched between them, awkward and heavy. I did not want this marriage either, Hana said finally. I was arranged to marry Tae-yang to unite two powerful Valkyr houses. It was my duty. I accepted it. But you did not want it, Daeho said. No, Tae-yang is cruel and ambitious. But duty matters more than personal desire. She looked at him directly. Now I am bound to you instead. A human I do not know. This complicates many things. Daeho leaned back. Can I ask something? Are you actually vampires? Like from the old Earth stories? Hana almost smiled. No. My people evolved on a world with different atmospheric conditions. We need an enzyme found in blood to survive. Our bodies process it for energy and healing. It gives us enhanced strength and speed, and we live much longer than humans. How much longer? I am 93 years old. Daeho blinked. She looked maybe 25. Oh. Human blood is particularly rich in the enzyme we need, Hana continued. That is one reason why some Valkyr wanted an alliance with humanity. Others, like Tae-yang, see humans as inferior beings. Prey. The word prey made Daeho uncomfortable. And you? What do you think? Hana considered the question. I have never been close to a human before. You are weaker than us physically. You live such short lives. But today you did something no Valkyr would do. You accepted responsibility for an accident that was not truly your fault. You agreed to save the life of a stranger. She tilted her head. That is interesting. Before their conversation could continue, the door chimed. A young Valkyr male entered without waiting for permission. He wore military armor and carried himself with obvious authority. His eyes fixed on Daeho with immediate suspicion. My brother Jiwon, Hana said. Commander of the Royal Guard. Jiwon looked Daeho up and down like he was examining a particularly disappointing specimen. This is the human who married my sister? He looks fragile. Nice to meet you too, Daeho muttered. Jiwon ignored him and spoke rapidly to Hana and Valkyr. She responded calmly, but Daeho could hear the tension in their exchange. Finally, Jiwon turned back to him. I will test you, human. If you are to be part of this family, you must prove you are worthy of my sister. Test me how? Daeho asked warily. Jiwon smiled, showing teeth that were slightly sharper than human teeth. A game of strategy. If you cannot even match wits with me, you have no business being married to a Valkyr princess. Hana looked like she wanted to object, but Daeho stood up. He was tired of being pushed around, tired of being looked down on. Fine, let us play. The game Jiwon chose was called Temporal Tactics, a three-dimensional strategy game played on a holographic board. Daeho had never seen it before, but the rules were similar to chess, with the added complexity of pieces that could move through different time layers. Jiwon explained the rules with barely concealed impatience, clearly expecting Daeho to lose quickly. The first game, Daeho lost within 10 moves. He was still learning. The second game, he lasted 20 moves before Jiwon cornered his key piece. By the third game, Daeho had figured out Jiwon's pattern. Valkyr had long lives, which meant they had time to perfect strategies. Jiwon played perfectly, using proven techniques that had probably worked for decades. But Daeho had grown up playing video games, learning to adapt quickly to new systems. He started doing things that made no sense according to proper strategy. He sacrificed important pieces for no apparent reason. He left openings that looked like mistakes but were actually traps. Jiwon's expression shifted from smug confidence to confusion to grudging concentration. The game stretched on for over an hour. Finally, Daeho made a move that Jiwon did not see coming, a combination so unusual that it had probably never been done before. Victory, the game announced in a pleasant synthetic voice. Jiwon stared at the board in disbelief. Hana was watching Daeho with open curiosity now. You fight like you dance, Jiwon said slowly. With chaos and innovation. No pattern, no tradition, just adaptation. Humans are good at adapting, Daeho said. We had to be. We evolved on a dangerous world, competing against animals bigger and stronger than us. We learned to think our way around problems we could not fight our way through. Jiwon stood and gave Daeho a slight bow. Perhaps my sister's accidental husband is not completely useless. Coming from him, it sounded almost like a compliment. After Jiwon left, Hana moved closer to Daeho on the couch. You impressed him. That is not easy to do. I just played a game, Daeho said. No. You showed him that humans have value beyond physical strength. That matters, she hesitated. There is something you should know. Taeyang will not accept this. He is part of 3 days after the wedding. Daeho and Hana boarded a small diplomatic ship bound for Valkyr Prime, the Valkyr homeworld. The journey was supposed to be ceremonial, a traditional bonding journey to Hana's ancestral fortress. Daeho had tried to argue that maybe they should skip the tradition, but apparently refusing would have been an even bigger insult than accidentally crashing a wedding. The ship was sleek and beautiful, with walls that shimmered like oil on water. Hana piloted while Daeho sat in the co-pilot seat, watching stars streak past the viewport. He had been a cargo pilot for years, but his ships were clunky, practical things. This vessel moved like liquid silk through space. How long until we arrive? Daeho asked. 16 hours, Hana replied, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. We will pass through the Corvus belt in approximately 2 hours. After that, smooth travel. Daeho nodded and tried to relax. The past 3 days had been a whirlwind of meetings with Valkyr officials, human ambassadors and lawyers from both species, trying to figure out the political implications of their marriage. Everyone seemed to have opinions about what Daeho and Hana should do, where they should live, and what their marriage meant for human-Valkyr relations. The only peaceful moments had been late at night, when he and Hana talked quietly about their lives. She told him about growing up in the Valkyr royal family, always being told what to do and who to be. He told her about his childhood on Earth, bouncing between his divorced parents, never quite fitting in anywhere. They were more similar than he had expected. The ship's alarms blared suddenly, red lights flashing across the cockpit. Hana's hands moved faster across the controls, her expression focused and calm. "What is happening?" Daeho asked, his heart rate spiking. "3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace behind us. They are targeting our engines." Her eyes narrowed. "Valkyr military vessels, but not ones loyal to my mother." "Tae Yang?" "Most likely." The ship rocked as weapons fire hit their shields. Hana banked hard to the left and Daeho grabbed his seat to avoid being thrown sideways. More alarms screamed for attention. "Can we outrun them?" Daeho asked. "Not in this ship. It is built for diplomacy, not combat." Hana pulled up a tactical display. The 3 pursuing ships were gaining fast. "I can try to lose them in the Corvus belt, but it will be dangerous." "More dangerous than getting shot?" Hana almost smiled. "Good point." She pushed the ship into the asteroid belt at speeds that made Daeho's stomach drop. Massive rocks tumbled through space around them, some as large as buildings. Hana wove between them with incredible precision, but their pursuers stayed close behind. "They are better pilots than I expected," Hana muttered. Daeho studied the tactical display, his mind racing. He had spent years navigating through crowded space lanes, dodging debris and other ships. He understood how to read patterns in chaos. "Go left at the big cluster ahead," he said suddenly. "Then cut engines completely." "What?" "We will drift right into the asteroids. Trust me, just for 10 seconds. Hana looked at him for one brief moment, then nodded. She followed his instructions, diving left into a dense cluster of spinning rocks. Then she cut the engines and they went dark and silent. The pursuing ships shot past them, their sensors apparently expecting the diplomatic ship to keep moving. By the time they realized their mistake, Hana had already restarted the engines and changed course. "How did you know that would work?" she asked. "Predators follow movement," Daeho said. "I used to deliver cargo through pirate territory. Sometimes the best way to hide is to stop running." They made it through the belt, but the damage was done. The ship's engine was failing and Hana could not fix it from the cockpit. They had maybe an hour before complete engine failure. "There is a moon nearby," Hana said, pulling up star charts. "Uninhabited but breathable atmosphere. We can land there and send a distress signal. Do we have a choice?" "Not really." The landing was rough. The ship scraped through the moon's atmosphere, shaking violently, and hit the ground hard enough to throw Daeho against his harness. Metal screeched and groaned. Then everything went still. Daeho unbuckled with shaking hands. "Are you okay?" Hana was already on her feet, checking systems. "Minor injuries only. The ship, however, is badly damaged. We will not be leaving in it." They gathered emergency supplies and stepped out into an alien forest. The sky was deep crimson, lit by a red dwarf star. The trees were black and twisted, with leaves that shimmered silver. The air smelled like rain and something spicy that made Daeho's nose itch. Hana activated her communicator and sent out a distress signal. "Jiwon will receive this, but it will take time for him to reach us. Maybe 12 hours. What about the people who attacked us? They will search for us. We need to move." She started walking into the forest, her movements confident and sure. Daeho followed, trying not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. They walked for hours through the strange forest. Hana set a brutal pace and Daeho struggled to keep up. His legs burned and his lungs ached, but he refused to complain. Finally, Hana stopped. She leaned against a black tree, breathing hard. When Daeho got closer, he saw blood on her side. "You are hurt!" "I was grazed by weapons fire during the attack." "It is nothing." "That is not nothing." Daeho pulled out the medical kit they had grabbed from the ship. The wound was deep, cutting through her side. For a Valkyr with enhanced healing, it should have been closing already, but it was still bleeding freely. Hana looked at the wound with concern. "Poison. They used poison weapons. My healing is slowed. Can you walk?" "Yes, but not quickly." She looked pale, which scared Daeho more than he wanted to admit. They kept moving, but slower now. Hana was clearly in pain, though she tried to hide it. Daeho stayed close, ready to catch her if she fell. As the hours passed and the alien sun set, the forest grew darker and colder. They found a small cave and took shelter. Hana collapsed against the cave wall, her breathing labored. Daeho built a fire using techniques he had learned during a camping trip years ago. grateful that dead wood burned the same on alien worlds. You need blood to heal, Daeho said. It was not a question. Hana did not meet his eyes. Yes, but I will not take yours. It would be wrong. Why? We are married, remember? You said Valkyrs share life essence with their bonded partners. You do not understand what you are offering. Feeding creates a bond deeper than ceremony, and human blood is powerful for us. I might lose control. Daeho knelt beside her. I did not go through a weird alien wedding just to watch you die in a cave. Besides, I trust you. You should not, Hana whispered, but there was longing in her eyes now. Too bad. I do anyway. He rolled up his sleeve and held out his arm. Just do not take too much. I need to be able to walk tomorrow. Hana stared at his arm for a long moment. Then, moving slowly, she took his wrist in her hands. Her touch was gentle, almost reverent. This will hurt, she warned. When she bit down, Daeho gasped. It did hurt, a sharp sting followed by a strange pulling sensation. But then something else washed over him. A feeling of connection that went beyond physical sensation. He could sense Hana's emotions, her pain and fear and deep gratitude. She only fed for a minute, but when she pulled away, her eyes were glowing brighter than he had ever seen. Her wound was already starting to close, the poison burned away by the strength of human blood. You taste like lightning and determination, she said softly. I have never experienced anything like it. Daeho felt dizzy but not weak. Is that a good thing? Yes. She looked at him with wonder. Your species is so short-lived, yet you burn so brightly. Every moment matters to you in ways I think I am only beginning to understand. They sat together by the fire, neither speaking. Daeho could still feel the echo of their connection, fading but not gone. Hana rested her head on his shoulder, a gesture that seemed to surprise both of them. Thank you, she whispered, for saving my life again. We are even now, Daeho said. You saved me from walking into more wrong rooms. She laughed softly. The sound made something warm bloom in his chest. Morning came with the sound of ships overhead. Daeho and Hana emerged from the cave to see Ji-won's forces landing in a clearing nearby. But there were also other ships bearing Tae-Yang's markings. Ji-won himself strode toward them, his face grim. Sister, we received your distress signal. But there is trouble back home. What kind of trouble? Hana asked. Tae-Yang has made a formal challenge. He demands trial by combat. Ji-won looked at Daeho. If the human loses, your marriage is annulled. Hana will be dishonored, and Tae-Yang is claiming the alliance with humanity should be dissolved. Hana's face went pale. No, he cannot. He can, Ji-won said. The High Council has approved it. The trial will take place in 1 week. Daeho felt cold despite the warm alien sun. Who do I have to fight? Ji-won met his eyes with sympathy. Tae-Yang himself, one of the deadliest warriors in the Valkyr Empire. I am sorry, human. He means to kill you. The training facility on the royal flagship was massive, with high ceilings and walls lined with weapons from 1,000 years of Valkyr history. Daeho stood in the center of the room, wearing light training armor that felt both too heavy and not protective enough. Ji-won circled him like a predator studying prey. Again, he commanded. Daeho raised his training staff and tried to block the incoming strike. Ji-won's staff hit his shoulder hard enough to make his teeth rattle, even though the Valkyr commander was clearly holding back most of his strength. Dead, Ji-won said flatly. For the 10th time this morning. Daeho rubbed his shoulder and tried not to show how much it hurt. They had been training for 3 days and he was covered in bruises. His body ached in places he did not know could ache. I am trying, Daeho said through gritted teeth. Trying is not enough. In 4 days you will face Tae-Yang in front of the entire Valkyr High Council and representatives from a dozen allied worlds. If you lose, Hana loses her honor, the human alliance crumbles, and you die. Ji-won lowered his staff. I am trying to keep you alive, human, but you are so slow. Compared to Valkyr, yes. Humans are slower, weaker too. Daeho took a drink of water, his hands shaking slightly from exhaustion. So we cannot win by being stronger or faster. We have to be smarter. Ji-won considered this. What do you mean? You have been trying to teach me to fight like a Valkyr, but I will never be as good as Tae-Yang at Valkyr combat. He has been training for decades, maybe longer. I have had 3 days. Daeho set down his water. Instead, teach me to fight like a human. And how do humans fight? Dirty, unpredictable. We use every advantage we can find, because we need to. Daeho thought about history lessons from school. about how ancient humans hunted animals much larger and more dangerous than themselves. We are persistence hunters. We might not be able to kill you in one strike, but we can outlast you. We can adapt faster than you expect. We can do things you have never seen before. Things that do not make sense according to your rules. Jiwon's expression shifted to something like interest. Show me. They sparred again, but this time Daeho stopped trying to use proper technique. When Jiwon expected a high block, Daeho dropped to the ground and swept at his legs. When Jiwon anticipated a retreat, Daeho charged forward into too close range where the Valkyr's longer reach became a disadvantage. He lost every bout, but he lasted longer. And once, just once, he managed to land a hit that Jiwon did not see coming. Jiwon touched the spot on his ribs where Daeho's staff had connected. That was clever. Dishonorable by Valkyr standards, but clever. Will the trial allow dishonorable tactics? Daeho asked. The trial has rules against weapons and lethal force until the final phase. Beyond that, Jiwon smiled grimly. Victory is victory. If you win by being unpredictable and chaotic, it still counts. While Daeho trained with Jiwon, a human woman named Bo-Ra was working on the political side of the crisis. She was the ambassador from Earth, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who had been navigating galactic politics for years. She visited Daeho on the 4th day of training, finding him in his quarters trying to soak his aching muscles in a bath that was designed for Valkyr, and therefore absurdly large. How are you holding up? Bo-Ra asked, settling into a chair near the bath. Everything hurts, Daeho admitted. But Jiwon says I'm improving. Good, because I have news and you are not going to like it. Bo-Ra pulled out a data tablet. Taeyang's faction has been planning this for months. The original wedding was supposed to give them access to Hana's military connections. They were going to use the marriage to position themselves for a coup. Daeho sat up straighter, water sloshing. A coup against who? The Empress. Hana's mother. Bo-Ra swiped through files. We have evidence, but it is complicated. The Valkyr political system does not allow us to simply present proof and have Taeyang arrested. Everything has to go through formal channels, and those channels are slow. So even if we prove he is a traitor, I still have to fight him. Yes, but the evidence will help politically. If you win, Taeyang's faction loses all credibility. If you lose, she did not finish the sentence. I die, Hana is dishonored, and the bad guys win, Daeho said. No pressure. Bo-Ra smiled slightly. You know, when I first heard about this situation, I thought you were an idiot who got lost. Now I think you might be the luckiest idiot in the galaxy. How am I lucky? I am about to fight an alien super warrior who wants to kill me. Because you have given humanity something we desperately needed. Proof that we belong in the galactic community. You have shown courage, adaptability, and honor. You have made a Valkyr princess see humans as equals. Bo-Ra stood up. Win or lose, Daeho, you have already changed things. But I really hope you win. That evening, Hana found Daeho on the observation deck staring out at the stars. They were orbiting Valkyr Prime now. The planet a massive red sphere below them. The trial would take place on the surface tomorrow. You should be resting, Hana said softly. Cannot sleep, Daeho admitted. Too nervous. She stood beside him close enough that their shoulders almost touched. I have been researching human history, reading about your wars, your struggles. You are a species that has survived against terrible odds. We are stubborn, Daeho said. Too stubborn to know when to quit. It is more than stubbornness. Humans have shorter lives than most spacefaring species. You only get maybe 80 years if you are lucky, but you fill those years with passion and determination that long-lived species lose over centuries. Hana turned to look at him. I have lived 93 years, and I have been taught to be patient, to think in terms of decades and centuries. You have lived less than 30 years, but you burn brighter than any Valkyr I know. Daeho did not know what to say to that. I do not want you to die tomorrow, Hana said quietly. This started as an accident, a political complication. But somewhere over the past week it became something else. You have become important to me, Daeho, and I am not ready to lose you. He took her hand. Her skin was cool against his. I do not plan on dying. I'm too stubborn, remember? She smiled, but her eyes were worried. Taeyang is dangerous. He has killed in trials before. He will not show mercy. Then I will just have to be more stubborn than he expects. Daeho squeezed her hand. Besides, I have something he does not. What is that? A reason to fight beyond politics and honor. I am fighting for you. Hana's eyes widened slightly. Then she leaned in and kissed him, soft and tentative. When she pulled back, she was blushing, her pale cheeks flushed with color. "That was very human of me," she said, sounding embarrassed. Daeho smiled. "I liked it." They stood together watching the stars until late into the night, hands clasped, neither speaking. Tomorrow would bring battle and danger, but tonight they had this moment. On the morning of the trial, Daeho woke early. Ji-won met him for one final training session, running through tactics and strategies. "Remember," Ji-won said, "Tae-yang will expect you to be weak. He will try to end this quickly. Use his confidence against him. Make him angry. Angry fighters make mistakes. How do I make him angry? Fight like a human. Do things he considers beneath a warrior's dignity. Survive longer than he expects. Nothing enrages a proud Valkyr more than prey that refuses to die." Before they left for the arena, the Empress herself came to see Daeho. She was tall and regal, with silver hair and eyes that glowed like stars. She looked like an older version of Hana. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "I want you to know something. The calling of the consort ritual is ancient, placed into our laws long ago. Some believe it allows fate to choose the proper match. When you walked through those doors, I was watching. I saw the exact moment you arrived and the exact moment Tae-yang would have arrived if you had not." "You think fate wanted me to marry your daughter?" Daeho asked. "I think fate wanted to prevent my daughter from marrying a traitor who would have used her and then killed her once he had power." The Empress stepped closer. "You saved her life by being lost. Perhaps that is fate, or perhaps it is simply fortunate timing. Either way, I am grateful, and I want you to know that if you survive this trial, you will have my full support. You have already proven yourself worthy of Hana. Now prove it to the rest of my people." She left, and Daeho was alone with his thoughts. In a few hours, he would face Tae-yang in front of thousands of witnesses. He would fight for his life, for Hana, and for the alliance between their peoples. Ji-won appeared at the door. "It is time." Daeho stood up, his heart pounding. His body was sore and tired, but his mind was clear. He was not the strongest fighter. He was not the fastest, but he was human, and humans had spent millennia learning how to survive against impossible odds. He could do this. He had to. The arena was carved into the side of a mountain, a massive amphitheater that could hold tens of thousands of spectators. Daeho walked through the tunnel leading to the fighting floor, hearing the roar of the crowd above. His heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his breathing steady. Ji-won walked beside him, carrying Daeho's weapons. The rules are simple. First phase is hand-to-hand combat. Second phase allows blunt weapons. Final phase allows bladed weapons, and the fight continues until one combatant yields or dies. "Great," Daeho muttered. "Very comforting." "You can yield at any time," Ji-won said. "There is no shame in surrendering when outmatched." "If I yield, Hana loses everything." "Not an option." Ji-won gripped his shoulder. "Then fight like a human. Fight dirty, fight smart, and do not give up. That is your only chance." They emerged into the arena. The crowd noise hit Daeho like a physical force. Thousands of Valkyr filled the seats, their pale faces and glowing eyes all focused on him. In the royal box sat the Empress and Hana, along with the High Council. Hana's face was carefully neutral, but Daeho could see the fear in her eyes. On the opposite side of the arena, Tae-yang entered. He was tall and muscular, wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed in the red sunlight. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. When he saw Daeho, he smiled. The High Officiant stood at the center of the arena, his voice amplified by technology. "This trial will determine the legitimacy of the bond between Princess Hana and the human Daeho. Tae-yang of House Corvin has challenged this bond. The combat will proceed in 3 phases. May honor guide both warriors." Tae-yang and Daeho faced each other across the sand. Up close, Tae-yang was even more intimidating. He was a head taller than Daeho and probably twice as strong. "You should have run when you had the chance, human," Tae-yang said. "I will make your death quick if you yield now." "Thanks, but no thanks," Daeho replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am kind of attached to living." The horn sounded, beginning the first phase. Tae-yang moved like lightning, crossing the distance between them in a heartbeat. His first punch would have crushed Daeho's skull if it had connected, but Daeho ducked under it, years of dodging cargo equipment in tight spaces making his reflexes sharp. He could not match Tae-yang's strength, so he did not try. He stayed mobile, ducking and dodging, making Tae-yang chase him around the arena. the crowd murmured. This was not how trials usually went. Taeyang grew frustrated, his attacks becoming more aggressive. Daeho let himself get backed into a corner, and when Taeyang lunged forward for what should have been an easy kill, Daeho dropped flat to the ground. Taeyang slammed into the arena wall and Daeho scrambled away. "Stand and fight," Taeyang roared. "I am fighting," Daeho panted. "Just not the way you want me to." The first phase lasted 20 minutes, far longer than anyone expected. Daeho took several hits that left him bleeding and dizzy, but he kept moving, kept surviving. By the time the horn sounded for the second phase, Taeyang was breathing hard and visibly angry. Jiwan brought Daeho a staff, simple and light. Taeyang took a massive war club that looked like it could crush stone. The second phase was worse. Taeyang's weapon gave him reach and devastating power. Daeho could not block the strikes, only dodge them, but he used his staff to trip Taeyang, to jab at weak points in the armor, to stay just out of reach. And he talked. "You know what is funny?" Daeho said, barely avoiding a swing that would have broken his ribs. "You think you are fighting for honor, but everyone knows you are just angry that you lost your political marriage." Silence. Taeyang swung again, missing. "The Empress knows you were planning a coup. We have evidence. You are not a warrior, you are just a traitor who is about to lose to a human cargo pilot." Taeyang's face twisted with rage. His attacks became wild, powerful, but sloppy. Daeho managed to land a solid hit to Taeyang's knee, and the Valkyr stumbled. The crowd was louder now, some cheering for Daeho, the human who would not die, the weak creature who kept getting back up. The horn sounded for the final phase. Bladed weapons. This was where people died. Daeho took a short sword from Jiwan. His hands were shaking and his body was covered in bruises. Everything hurt, but he was still standing. Taeyang took a long, curved blade that looked like it had been used in 100 battles. "No more running, human. This ends now." He charged, and this time there was nowhere for Daeho to run. The blade came down in a strike meant to kill, and Daeho barely got his sword up to block. The force of the impact sent shockwaves through his arms. They fought blade to blade, and Daeho was clearly outmatched. Taeyang was faster, stronger, more skilled. But Daeho had something else. He had spent the last week learning to read Valkyr fighting patterns. He had studied Taeyang's style through recordings of past trials. And he had learned that Taeyang always finished with the same combination: high slash, low thrust, spinning strike. When Taeyang started the sequence, Daeho was ready. He blocked the high slash, dodged the low thrust, and when Taeyang spun for the killing blow, Daeho did something completely unexpected. He threw his sword. It was a terrible throw, clumsy and off target, but it surprised Taeyang enough to make him hesitate for just a fraction of a second. Daeho used that moment to tackle him, using his body weight to drive them both to the ground. They grappled in the sand, and this was where human endurance mattered. Taeyang was stronger, but Daeho had trained for this. He had practiced falling and getting up thousands of times over the past week. His muscles knew how to keep fighting through exhaustion. Daeho managed to get behind Taeyang and lock his arm around the Valkyr's throat. It was not a proper chokehold, and Taeyang was fighting to break free, but Daeho held on with everything he had. "Yield," Daeho gasped. "Just yield and this ends." "Never," Taeyang snarled, still struggling, but Daeho could feel the Valkyr's movements getting weaker. Taeyang had expected a quick victory. He had burned through his energy in rage and frustration. Daeho, trained to conserve every bit of strength, still had reserves left. Humans were persistence hunters. They ran down prey not by being faster but by refusing to stop, by outlasting everything else on the planet. Taeyang's struggles grew weaker, then stopped. The arena went silent. Daeho held on for a few more seconds, not trusting it. Then carefully he released Taeyang and stumbled back. The Valkyr warrior lay unconscious in the sand. The high officiant's voice rang out. "Taeyang is unable to continue. Victory to Daeho of Earth!" The crowd erupted. Half were cheering, half were stunned into silence. Daeho stood there bleeding and exhausted, barely able to believe it himself. Hana was running across the arena, and then she was there, holding him, checking his wounds. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." "Told you I was stubborn," Daeho managed to say before his legs gave out. He woke up in a medical facility, his body wrapped in bandages and healing devices. Hana sat beside his bed, holding his hand. When she saw him wake, relief flooded her face. "How long was I out?" Daeho asked. 6 hours. The healers said you had 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, internal bleeding, and more bruises than they could count, but you will recover fully. And Taeyang? Arrested? Once you won the trial, the evidence of his planned coup was presented to the High Council. He and his faction are being tried for treason. Hana squeezed his hand gently. You saved more than just our marriage. You exposed a plot that could have destroyed the alliance and hurt my people. I just did not want you to die, Daeho said. Everything else was just survival. You did more than survive. You showed the entire Valkyr Empire what humanity is capable of. Hana smiled. The Empress wants to make you an official ambassador. Bora thinks it is a good idea. Daeho groaned. I just wanted to deliver cargo and eat noodles. How did my life get so complicated? You walked through the wrong door, Hana said, but she was laughing. 6 months later, Daeho stood on the observation deck of a diplomatic station that orbited between Earth and Valkyr Prime. Hana stood beside him, their hands clasped. Below them, ships from both worlds docked and departed, trading goods and ideas. The marriage that had started as an accident had become something real. Daeho and Hana traveled between worlds, helping humans and Valkyr understand each other. It was strange work and sometimes frustrating, but it mattered. Jiwon had become Daeho's best friend, though he still insisted on strategy games that he consistently lost. I need to study human unpredictability, he would say after each defeat. Bora had been right. Daeho's victory in the trial had changed things. Humans were no longer seen as weak or inferior by most Valkyr. They were seen as valuable allies who brought different strengths to the galaxy. And on a personal level, Daeho had found something he had been searching for his whole life without knowing it. A place where he belonged. A purpose that mattered, and someone who saw him for who he really was. Do you ever regret it? Hana asked, watching the ships below. Taking that wrong turn? Daeho thought about his old life. The loneliness, the aimless drifting from job to job, never connecting with anyone or anything. Then he thought about everything that had happened since he walked through those doors. The fear and pain, yes, but also the growth in purpose and love.